Welcome back, guys. So in today's episode we are going to use some indicators to execute trades, and yeah, let's see if we can get this baby profitable. So let's dive into it. So what we can see in front of us are two indicators you may be familiar with. First is Bollinger Bands and the second is the RSI. Let's make a short recap. So the RSI will most likely define if an asset is overbought or oversold. And we can see it here. It's most likely the barrier of 70 and 30. And here we can see the Bollinger Bands. Bollinger Bands are as well a sign of something is overbought or not. So this is basically a moving average with a deviation. And yeah, we can see here if it goes to the top, it most likely bounce back and so on. And with those two indicators, we will now try to build our expert advisor. So let's open the meta editor and then let's click on data, on new, and then on expert advisor. Here we go. Let's call it RSI and Bollinger. Great. Here we go. So, and the first thing we are going to do is to include our library. If you haven't watched my last video, I would highly recommend that, because there I'm sharing my library and there are some very useful functions which you can just reuse, and that will make coding for you a lot more easier. So then let's include it. Okay, here we go. And the next thing we are doing is to predefine some variables. So what we need, of course, is the RSI period. And let's give it the value 14. Next thing is the Bollinger Bands period. And we will give it the value 20. And then let's add as well the time frame. And keep in mind, time frame is always an integer, and M1 is defined as 1, M15 as 15, 1 hour as 60, 4 hours, for example, 240, and yeah. So let's go with M15, and then let's add as well the Bollinger time frame. Here we go. Now I will show you one more thing. This is a bit complicated to enter 15. We want to have this a bit more easier, and therefore we are creating an enum. What's the easiest way to explain that? So with that you can basically define your own type of variable, and I will show you that. It's underscore, and then I will call my variable time frame. Then I have to open the curly brackets, and then I can basically do it like that. M1 equals 1, M5 equals 5, and so on. I will just copy this. So here we go. This is M15, 15, then this is M30, 30, then this is H1 time frame, it's 60, and H4, and here we go with 240. Okay, that's enough. So one thing, we have to close this. Perfect. Now what we can do is, instead of using an integer, we can use on the time frame now our predefined variable and just call it M1. And here we can call it also, for example, M1. Okay, now let's add something here, extern. If we add extern, we can define those variables in the settings of the expert advisor, and I will show you that right now. Here we go. Click on compile. Then let's go back to the MetaTrader. If we are inserting now our new expert advisor, we can see in the settings all variables. And the cool thing now is that we don't have to enter here anymore 1, 5, 15, 60, 240 for H4 or something like that. We can now enter H4. So it's much more readable. And we click on OK, and then this EA will use the H4. And if we go back here, we can see our own variable defines H4 as 240 minutes, because that's the time frame for H4. Now let's continue with the methods. So first method we are going to write is the RSI, and we call it as always get, because we get something, then RSI, and here we go. Let's type in period and int shift. So as explained in the previous tutorials, we are writing variables in those brackets because when we call it in the future, we want to give this method sometimes different periods or shifts, for example. And so we can reuse it and just call it with a different number. And here we go. Now let's type in return. And then we can call the RSI with RSI, and then we open it. Then we have to type in the symbol. We will just use the current symbol, and then we have to use the time frame. Time frame is RSI time frame. We can define that in our settings. Then for period, we are using this variable, and then for applied price, we use price close. That's the standard. And for the shift, we use the shift. Here we go. That's it. Let's type control comma to align everything up. Perfect. Looks amazing. Now the next thing we are going to need is the upper band and the lower band from the Bollinger Bands. Double get upper band. Here we go. Open the brackets, then again period, then deviation, that's also a setting of the Bollinger Bands, and again the shift. Here we go. Open curly brackets, and then let's type return, and then we can just type I bands, open it. Then again we have to type in the symbol. We will use the symbol from the current chart. Then for time frame we will use our variable Bollinger time frame. Then we have to type in the period. Then we have to type in the deviation. Then this is 0. This is the band shift. You can ignore that. And then again price close. That's the standard. And for mode, we need to define now which band do we want, and we want the upper band mode, and then type in upper, and here we go. And then the shift at the end. Shift. Again, that's very easy explained. 1 second, I will align this. Now I can show it to you. So if we type in shift 0, for example, we get the value of the current band. So that's this value. We are going for the upper, so it's this value. If we type in shift 1, we are getting this value up here. If we go for 2, for example, then we get this value. So pretty easy. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Okay, here we go. Then let's clone this method and call it get lower band. Then we have to change here this to how it's called, lower, not low, lower. Perfect. Here we go. Okay, then I want to write one more method, and this method is called isTradeOpen. isTradeOpen. Here we go. We will define it as bool because we want to give back true or false. And then let's make a condition if orders total, so that will give us back all open trades. If we have one trade open, we will get back 1. So let's type in if this is equals 0, then we want to return false, and otherwise else we want to return true. Here we go, pretty easy. So that means if we type in isTradeOpen, we will get false if there's no trade open, and if there is a trade open, we will get true. Okay, here we go. Now let's do the amazing part and write the logic. Pretty simple. Let's write down logic, void logic, close this method. So we define it as void because this should just execute something and don't give something back. So now let's make our first condition here. So if is trade open equals false and is new candle, that's a method from my library, equals true, and then do something. I will show you now something. Here we missed the brackets because it's a method. We have always to call it like that. But I will show you now something. We can either write is trade open equals false, or we can just remove that. Then we need to add here this sign, and now this condition is true if it returns false. And we can also remove this here, because if this one gives back true, then the condition is met. So this will automatically ask if the next condition is false, and this, if you don't write anything, you just ask for the boolean, you want to assume that this is getting back true. So exact same thing, just you saved a little bit of code, but we do it like that, it's easier to understand. Okay, here we go. Then let's start with defining the variables we need. Okay, what we need is the current RSI, and how we get that with get RSI. So we have to pass forward the period. We defined that in our settings. It's RSI period, and as well the shift. And for shift we go with 0. So that's the exact current RSI. Great. Next variable we need is current price. Here we go. And this is bit. Here we go. Then we need the upper band and the lower bands. So here we go. Then we type get upper band, perfect. Open the brackets. We need to pass the time frame again. The period. And then for deviation we type in 2, because that's the default setting. If you take a look here, bands settings, we can see deviation. In my language is Abweichung, but it's deviation in English, and that's 2. And we will go for that. And for the shift we will type in also 0. So now we need also the lower band equals get lower band. Here we go. Passing again the Bollinger period. Deviation is 2, shift is 0. Here we go. Okay, now let's start with the conditions. Here we go. Let's check if the current RSI is lower than 30 and if the current price is lower than the lower band. Here we go. Then what we want to do is to just open a buy position. Set buy, risk setting 3. If you can't remember how the set buy works, right click, go to definitions, then you can see if I type in 3, I can enter a fixed lot size. Then one lot, 10 pips SL, 10 pips CP, 10 pips SL. Here we go. Perfect. Now let's just copy that, paste it down here. Then what we want is that the current RSI should be greater than 70 and the current price should be greater than the upper band. And then we want to have a sell trade. Here we go. Perfect. Now what we can do here is to add an else statement. Why? Pretty simple. If this one is true, he will not check for this one. And if this condition is false, only then he will check for this one. So both methods will work, but this is making the code slower because he always checks for both conditions. And This one is making it faster because he only checks for this condition if this condition was false, because both conditions cannot be true at the same time. Okay, here we go. Now make sure that the logic is added in the on tick as well. That's the case, and then we just click on compile and hope for no errors. Here we go, no errors at all. Perfect. Then let's test this thing out. Let's choose it here. Let's click to settings. I want to go with M15 and M15. Here you see every tick. Let's start with June. Click on visual mode so we can see it. M15 spread. Perfect. Now let's see if we're making some trades. And as we can see, we have here our first trade. We can see that when this candle opened, he started to make a trade. And why? Because on that moment he was outside of the Bollinger Bands and RSI was above 70. It doesn't look like that right now because the RSI moved down when this candle moved down, but when this candle opened, the RSI was above 70. Okay, great. Looking good so far. Then move on. This was a take profit. Great. Here we go. We had some new trades. Let's make it smaller. Yeah, great. We can see we had here a buy position. RSI was above 30 and then we was as well outside of the Bollinger Bands. It doesn't look like that right now, but when this candle opened, we have been outside of the Bollinger Bands. But when this candle went down even more, the Bollinger Bands got also moved down a bit more because the Bollinger Bands are moving with the current candle. For example, if this candle is going up now, we can see that this is going up as well and this as well. Okay, great. Then we had here our next trade and this one was a take profit. So 3 trades, 1 take profit, 1 stop loss, 1 take profit. So we are in profit. Okay, looks great. One thing we could change now is, let's make here a shift of 1. If we are doing that, we can see it better because now when this candle opens, we check how was the RSI on that candle close, how was the Bollinger Band on that candle close, and that will improve the possibility to check the EA. So here we go again. We can see it's more or less the same trades, so it doesn't make a huge difference. We can see exact same trades, but we can see it a bit better because now we know exactly. When this candle opened, we checked for that price. We checked if the price was above this Bollinger Bands and if the RSI was above 30. And we can see that here as well as it was 27. Okay, that's it. Pretty easy and straightforward. I would assume something like that will work better because RSI, if we have a strong trend, it's definitely not the best thing to look at, but in lower time frame, it's very impulsive and it can help to catch like small moves. And with the Bollinger Band, on the other hand, I would go with a higher time frame and check that there. Then I would assume it will work a little bit better. But it's up to you. You can test it and see how it works for you, if it works for you. So that's it from this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and now you have even more resources to build your own EA, and we will just keep uploading new videos. So hopefully at the end of this whole series you have all the resources and all the knowledge to build the craziest EA you can imagine. Thank you guys for watching and keep hustling.